What about EV infrastructure, in China? How rapidly is that growing in terms of having charging stations across or batteries, just getting the whole battery supply chain, the back end ready?
Well, this is where China has excelled in its, I'd say, in its public-private partnership mode of business, building out infrastructure to de-risk consumer purchase consideration, that you won't have the facilities needed to charge your vehicle. Public charging infrastructure far more penetrated. More than half the world's public charging infrastructure for EVs is in China. And the use case of how people use vehicles pretty much is covered with the available charging infrastructure. Obviously, that means some consumers who would like to have the security of having a charging facility at their home, they can do that too. But I think that's not as big a consideration in China as it certainly is in the rest of the world, where people still consider EVs to be a compromise to the way in which we use our vehicles.
And if BYD is actually taking market share from traditional manufacturers or ICE makers, essentially, I do want to understand what that does for the remainder of the market, because you would imagine that Li Auto, NIO, XPeng are also doing the same.
Right, but again, the crossover, what's happened is the EV prices, as Tesla has waged this price war, the EV price has come down considerably. It used to be EVs had a cost disadvantage and they needed to be subsidized with tax abatements, with purchase subsidies, and that was the way it got started. Now with the prices coming down from the manufacturer, they're competing head-to-head in a very price-competitive way with the ICE products. And if you're in a city like Shanghai or some other cities where you have plate restrictions, getting access to a vehicle is much easier if it's an EV than an ICE. That's really hurting the mid-market positioned overseas traditional automakers.
Bill, I suppose carrying on that point and getting back to the point that I was making before, what about the likes of, say, a Toyota? Because they've just announced that they are seeking to really up their game in terms of EVs, in terms of having plug-in hybrids, in terms of having the hydrogen cell vehicles and the like. Do you think that they can catch a BYD or even penetrate the China market with any kind of subsistence, or is it just a little bit of a fever dream on their part that they're ever going to be able to really make up the ground that they've lost over the course of the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a challenge for the traditional car makers, because not only do they have to get in the game, they also have to compete at scale. And where the Chinese have the advantage right now is the ability to target that affordable price point, that below 250,000 RMB price point, with a high value for the money, well-contented vehicle at an affordable price point. It's a necessary condition to be in the EV game if you want to be in the market that's growing in China, in the segment that's growing in China, EV. But it's not sufficient, because you also have to make the EVs at scale and make them affordable for the average consumer to consider them. And that's where BYD has the advantage.